Darnell Wortham.
Hello there, Jeremy.
Oh, Gary. This is our third chat on Our Mind on Music. Did you realize that?
I did. I
Yeah.
knew that this was going to be number 3. Yeah.
Well, actually, technically, it's kind of number 4 because one of our conversations, we ended up having a response video. So it was like 3.5, kind of.
So labels have a difficult time sometimes putting you in a box.
Please make no mistake, I'm proud of many things we've done and do as humans. But we
A&R people, labels, record industry as a whole, they have a tendency to try to find the next. Whatever's hot right now, they want to find the next that. So they're looking for which category of what's hot right now to fit you into. And what I would recommend to them, look for the next new thing, the next big thing that's going to be big because it's not like everyone else. That is how we get the Beatles. That is how we get the Rolling Stones. That's how we get Jimi Hendrix, Earth, Wind and Fire. I mean, Lenny Kravitz was very different from everything else that was going on at that time. Allow yourself to be the one that discovers something that's going to stand out, not being that person, being similar.
Basically, stereotyping in the music business. You were talking about how when previously you were using just Gary Wortham, there were times when people would have, if they had
expectations.
they have
I call
expectations.
them expectations.
Yeah.
So,
so great to talk to you. How you doing?
you too. Not too bad. Just actually right now I'm just sitting out here, just some lyrics for it's like the most chilling song I've ever written. Why'd I spin it around on that one? It's a song called it's a song called Shame that may or may not make the album. So that's it's at the tail end of all of the songs that are done already, and I'm starting to work on the songs that are questionable whether I'm going to go that. This one goes super dark in terms of but it's dealing with real stuff that's genuine. It's not me just making up crazy mean stuff in America.
Yeah,
so what I want to put out a song that's as shameful as it's so shameful that it's actually called Shame. So I don't know. That song may never see the light of day.
Yeah.
honestly, you don't think it applies to you. And rules are there for someone else, but not for you. You step on people as quick as you step on a blade of grass. But the word on the wind is karma's gonna get the last laugh. And she's calling you out.
It's interesting, we come up with these ideas and then we take them as far as we can take them, and all of that sometimes is just good enough in terms of, I've talked to so many people now who've talked about music as therapy, songwriting as therapy.
It's so that.
Yeah.
That's so true. Absolutely.
Sometimes just having those words on the page there and having created that thing, sometimes it doesn't necessarily need to go into the whole machine of people listening and commenting and all those kinds of things. Sometimes just having written that is enough to say, "Ooh, okay, I got that off my chest,"
That's an interesting way of putting it, Jeremy. The whole machine of people commenting and responding. That's kind of what you do when you're an artist. And this is from speaking for myself, of course, but speaking for all the other artists that you talk to and that watch your show. That's kind of the thing that you're doing when you decide to put something out there. You're opening yourself up to anyone who comes across it. Is going to be able to respond to it one way or the other.
It's
it's kind of a machine.
Yeah, I mean, it becomes that. So I remember talking to a country artist, Jennifer Alvarado, on Our Mind on Music, and she was saying that when she started writing, it was into a diary, and she was basically writing poetry. She was writing songs, but when she decided that she was going to open up her diary to the world, like literally they sell diaries that have a little key, lock and key on it because it's your most personal thoughts, right?
My sister had one with the key.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, actually, I remember one of the first times I went to my wife's hometown. I went to my mother-in-law's house and I found a little pink book with a lock and key on it. My wife had one.
You did not look, Jeremy.
It wouldn't matter. It's all written in Chinese. I can't read Chinese.
That's true. She's got you.
Sweet slow ride like a burned out jukebox still plays rock and roll. Your love steals my soul. We're gonna rock this way to the beat, steady as a drum. We're gonna prove us right and prove them wrong when we keep on keeping on, like your favorite song playing on the radio and singing out at the top of your lungs. We're gonna rock this way to love.
So it's basically taking the lock and key off your diary, and then not just that, but then giving it to the world to comment as they will, you know. So it's a very bare your soul type of moment, you know.
Yeah. And those of us who have done it already, there are things that you say in it that you sometimes, you know, you may be this person, you know, 3 years ago, 2 years ago, 5 years ago, and feel free enough to say that. And there are things that you kind of think about later and maybe pull back and say, "Ooh, I said all that."
Well, yes. And
then,
also, I've wondered a lot of times about people like the Rolling Stones, where for myself, I can say I wrote songs in the 90s, let's say, that's how I felt at the time. And I thought an interesting twist of words or something like that, or that's just how I was feeling at the moment. In a lot of ways, I'm not that same guy. I don't feel that way. I don't have that teen angst or whatever I had at the time, you know? So I just don't feel the same. But the Rolling Stones, they're still doing, I don't know which song they might pick out. I remember Paul Simon talking about the 59th Street Bridge song once. Somebody asked, if there was one song that you wrote that became famous, if you could erase that song from your history, which one would it be? And he said that one. That was like my introduction as a kid to Simon and Garfunkel. Like, you know, but for him, he's like, Feeling Groovy felt really good at the time that they wrote that. But in 2024, he doesn't like singing Feeling Groovy, you know?
Right.
Slow down, you move too fast. You got to make the morning last. Just kicking down the cobblestones, looking for fun and feeling groovy. Ra-da-da-da-da-da, feeling groovy.
I mean, how many times do you have to, when you're a Mick Jagger type singer, do you have to get on the stage and prance around singing, "Let's spend the night together, now I need you more than ever"? Or occasionally you're Paul McCartney and you're, you know, doing a retro part of your show and you're doing, "Well, she was just 17, and you know what I mean.
And I'm 77.
Enough to be her great grandfather." You know?
Yeah, that's an excellent example, you know, because for, you know, at the time she was just 17, he was probably 18, you know?
Yeah, he was probably just 17 when he wrote the song, and by the time we were hearing it, he was 18 or 19.
Yeah.
So it was perfectly okay.
So let's talk about your stuff. You and I, as I started off saying, have spoken a couple of times on here. The last time we spoke, we were talking about Anomaly, which you released in 2022, was it?
Yeah, definitely was in 23, so it would have been 22.
There are times in life you have to make a choice. You want to speak your mind without losing your voice. You want to be heard without drowning others out.
The first time we spoke was in season 1 of our Mind on Music, episode 23. So I'm currently on season 3.
Oh,
so,
wow.
Yeah, so I can't believe I'm shooting quickly towards episode 100, which starting out, I never even thought about that. I was just doing these shows, you know?
And at the time, Jeremy, I do remember it feeling like it was sort of just, you were getting started. That's what it felt like at the time. You were early in the process and
Yeah,
just kind of finding your way.
you
And it's
were.
kind of amazing, even to me, only being, here, and now number 4, that you're pushing 100 episodes. That's awesome.
It's fantastic. You were probably, if not the first person that I interviewed, you were one of the earliest people that I interviewed when I changed to this format. Because originally, our Mind on Music was just myself and my friend Leon sitting in the studio talking about music. And I did make
Hmm.
notes for it, and we sort of had a little bit of guideline, but mostly it was open conversation about music, which is a ton of fun. And I hope he and I will do that again at some point.
Hmm.
But at one point, I changed over to this format where I talk with people like yourself about the music that you make, or music educators, producers, etc. You were one of the
Hmm.
first ones that I spoke with. So
That's kind of cool.
yeah,
I like that.
yeah,
I didn't realize that I was one of the first that you spoke with, first musicians that you spoke with, like as a guest. That I did not realize until just now.
Leah,
I knew it was early, but I just figured there'd have been other musicians.
yeah,
Maybe a dozen. I thought maybe even as many as a dozen before me.
no way. No, Leon and I had
Huh.
started the idea. We were having conversation as musicians about where do these songs come from and how do we get these ideas? Because as you know, being a musician, being a songwriter means that when you have an idea in your head, you can then translate that into something that people can hear, right?
Yep.
That's why we study these instruments, and that's why we do all this stuff. But people who are not musicians also have musical ideas. It happens all the time. Like my sister, who is a writer and a poet, she has written to me a bunch of times with poems, and she'll say,
Lyrics, poems.
"Did you make these lyrics into a song?" You know, so that's where this whole idea started. And I reached out just basically saying that, and you came back to me saying, "Hey, how would you feel about chatting about my music?" And so we did.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then cool stuff, like after I heard your music and I was like, "Oh, I like this a lot." Then you reached out to me again and you talked to me about 10 Saturdays, one of the songs from that same album.
Then we collaborated.
And we collaborated. You asked me if I'd do a remix.
There are things in your extensions that you don't dare mention on a Saturday. Once you understand the problem, you know all there is about them. You see through the haze. In a lonely self-description, carry out your own convictions with a razor's grace. Underneath the big umbrella, show the
We did the collaboration for remix of 10 Saturdays, which I'll play a little snippet of that here as well. That was really cool, you
There
know.
are things in your extensions that you don't dare mention on a Saturday. Once you understand the problem, you know all there is about them. You see through the haze. In a lonely self-description, carry out your own convictions with a razor's grace. All the summer don't last forever, and I won't last very long. If you don't give me something I can use in a song. It's Saturday, it's Saturday, it's Saturday, it's Saturday.
Also, you collaborated with someone else. There's a single called Too Far that you were part of in 2023. Is that right?
With Joey Talbot, better known as Weeje. That's his stage name. But yeah. Joey had some music that he kind of contacted me and said, I don't know what to do with this in terms of lyrics. I'm not finding he says, maybe you want to give it a shot. See
Mm.
what he basically said, I can hear you on it, but maybe you could. And it took me a minute because it's like I felt the same way when I heard it. I felt like I can hear me on it, but I can't find it yet. But I know it's there, and then I just needed to live with it for a while, and I finally figured out what it seemed like it sounded like to me, and that's what came out.
I have said before that music is like magic because like we do these quote unquote tricks by playing the guitar or
Yep,
we do these things that
parlor
the
tricks,
audience, sorry.
parlor tricks.
Well, sort of, but the
Hmm.
audience, the difference is the audience, it isn't sleight of hand. We're telling the audience what we're doing. They know what the
Hmm.
magic is, and it's still magical.
But yeah, here's the reason I said parlor tricks is someone described it to me this way. I know that what you do with your hands makes that sound that
Mhm.
my ears hear, and I know how it makes me feel. But when I watch your hands, even though there's got to be some sense to it, it makes no sense to me. I can't see what you're doing as what makes that sound, but I can see
Exactly.
that what you're doing is making that sound. At the same time, it makes sense because it makes sense to you, so I accept that.
Mhm.
But when I look at you go, it doesn't make sense to me in the sense that I can put that crazy, contortion of your hand
Mhm.
into what to me, and this is going to sound self-serving, but I don't mean it to. It to me, what sounds like beautiful sound. I hear beautiful sounds coming out of your hands, and I see you looking like you're just making weird shit out with your hand.
And the funny thing is, like for me, I could watch your hands and it would make sense to me because I know how to do those things. But
Exactly, exactly.
as much
That's
as
the
I've studied
difference.
music pretty much my whole life at this point, I still don't know. Like for me, the big mystery is where did those ideas come from? What is the connection of synapses or people talk about calling in the universe and all this kind of stuff. Tori Amos
Mm-hmm.
was speaking with Rick Beato on his
Mm-hmm.
show.
Oh, I love those Rick Beatos. You know what? When I see those, I think of you. I just want to tell you that.
Really? Oh, wow.
You don't do it differently than him. He's just got more connections and he gets you would interview those people in a similar way that he does because you think about music. And that's why the title of your show is so perfect. Because you don't get on there and say, "Hey, you're a celebrity and you were with this guy or you were with that guy." Rick does a little bit of that, but he then gets into the mechanics of when you wrote this song and you came up with that part, and like when he's talking to Michael McDonald about Steely Dan, those things, those stories I can listen to forever, repeatedly. When he's having those kinds of conversations, he gets into the mechanics of it. You tend to get into the music and the mechanics of it, very similar to the way that he does. He just has more clout. If you
Well,
had the same clout, you'd have the same conversations.
well, I mean, thank you. First of all, like to be compared in any way to what he does on his show, Rick Beato. I mean, Leon and I used to do a thing. We mentioned Rick Beato in every episode, and I even had a drum that I called it the Rick Roll.
Okay. All right. There you go.
Um, yeah, totally. I've written to Rick Beato to tell him that he was a huge inspiration for the format of this show, actually. The show is titled Our Mind on Music because of a book by Daniel Levitin from Montreal called This Is Your Brain on Music. So
Okay.
I was reading that book at the time, and it's amazing. This Is Your Brain on Music. You should definitely read it if you haven't. He's written some other books, but that book was the one that I've read it twice, actually, because there's so much in there about that stuff, about music and the mystery of music, really. Where does it all come from?
He's got, yeah, I'm saying I heard was a secret chord. He's got a couple of interesting ones. Weaponized lies, how to think critically in the post-truth era. Ah, okay, sounds like my kind of guy.
I was in Calgary, not this past summer, but the summer before, and they have this amazing music display building there called Studio Bell. They had a whole display on Daniel Levitin's work. And I was just like, my daughter goes, Bubba, are you like fanboying over a scientist? I was like, yeah, I kind of am. I was so excited that his stuff was there and I could check it out and learn more about it. So yeah, anyway, he's a huge inspiration for me.
You had to say that you didn't want to know when I told you we could make this a better place. We all are so lonely in this moment we call life. Oh, by the way, you have everything to gain and nothing to lose. I'm thinking about.
So in this music village of creative people, I met someone who pointed something out to me this morning that was kind of a mind-blowing thing I hadn't thought about. And that is that there have been studies, or at least he told me about one where if you were left-handed, for example, and you do something with your right hand that you normally would do something with your left hand, his example he gave was brushing your teeth. That actually opens up parts of your mind that you would normally not use because you're doing everything. I'm left-handed as hell. Turns out that I realized. So when I was a kid, I got a guitar. I was 12 years old. Guitar was right-handed. I was not happy, but I was thrilled with the guitar, but it was right-handed. Dad said, hey, play it. Learn how to play right-handed because you don't know how to play whether you're left-handed or right-handed. It doesn't matter. So I learned how to play right-handed. And I felt like that was a point in my life where I felt like I got smarter. I was always kind of like that nerdy kid in the school, in the classroom, raising my hand, answering every question. But when I started playing guitar, I felt like I got smarter. And I thought, oh, well, I'm just getting older, so I'm getting smarter. And it may turn out that guitar actually helped me with that because I was playing right-handed till I'm left-handed. Who knows?
There's a group called Bigger, Better Brains.
Mm-hmm.
It's education, but they really focus on music. And they publish these things about the value of music beyond playing music. Like they show a picture of a piano, say, this isn't just a piano. This is a means to unlocking your creativity. It's a means to understanding patterns. It's a means to all of these things. And one of the things they released recently was the reason that you should practice music shortly before doing an important examination on anything. So you're doing a math exam in school, you're a high school student, you're about to do your math exam. That morning, you should practice your instrument. Because
that makes sense to me. That really does.
It opens up your brain, and it's doing the research, and this is what they're finding. So what you just said, it's actually scientifically proven. Like the study of music does so much more for us than just allowing us to express the ideas in our heads.
I just had another eureka. So in college, I was in a band called Back of Us. As my time in school moved on, and as I, moved to being a junior and a senior, the band was playing a lot more. And so we were practicing a lot more. I was writing a lot more. And my grades were not horrible, but as the classes got harder, oddly enough, they got easier. Or as it got more advanced, I got into some of the, pre-graduate courses and then some courses that were at graduate level, PhD level, even in psychology. And I was getting A's and everything. And I was doing a lot more playing and a lot more music at the time, which I thought would have the opposite effect because, but I was remembering everything and getting great grades. I just went with it. There's a particularly hard class that pre-med kids were failing called physiological psychology. Dr. Gunderson, never forget it. Brilliant guy, weird, but brilliant. And I aced that class. And if you had an A going into the final, you didn't have to take the final. But I was so used to having to show up for the final he had said, if you know you've got an A, I don't need to see you. You aced the class.
Yeah.
And I showed up for the final. He turned to me and said, "You're persona non grata." And of course, in Latin means you're not needed here.
Mm-hmm.
Now, here's the messed up part. I understood and walked out. And because I just understood him and was like, thumbs up, walked out. A classmate later said, "What did you do? How did you piss off Dr. Gunderson that he kicked you out of the final?" I said, "Oh, no, no, no. It wasn't like that. It was the other way around. It was a happy you're not needed here." But now that connects with what you're saying. That makes sense because I was playing a lot.
It was something we started talking about back when I first started in education. There
Mm-hmm.
was the little Einstein thing, and they had baby Mozart and all these kinds of things back then.
Yep.
They were playing music for babies, and they thought maybe listening to this will help.
Yep.
It does. Much further down the road is the idea of actually playing the music and all the things they're finding out about how much that helps.
People talking about their journeys, but I don't really know. Not quite sure where I'm standing, much less where I want to go. Oh no. They're the one that's driving, steady hands upon the wheel.
So if we can talk about your new album, what is the name of the new album? Do you have a name yet?
I think it's just going to be called Gwrth, GWRTH, which actually is turning out to be a project within a project because Gwrth is turning into the band. So my band now consists of, as far as committed members, I won't name names, but a drummer and a bass player out here in Los Angeles that are committed to this, and we've been sort of chatting and making plans and getting our act together and stuff. Those two actually, it's early enough in this part of the process. They have not even met each other. They've only, it's only been like texting and what have you between us. But that's going to happen soon. I have a manager. It's someone who's breaking into being a manager, and so they're new at it. But I wanted someone who's dedicated to managing this band because now it's with all the other parts and pieces, I'm going to need someone doing more of the legwork than just me.
Wow.
Because I'm yeah.
We did talk about that before. We did talk
yeah.
about that being one of the things. Like you don't just
Yeah.
write songs anymore. You have the whole thing from beginning to the bringing it out to people.
Yeah.
So Gary Wortham Gwrth, is that it?
So Gary Darnell Wortham, and it'll be like Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers, Gary Darnell Wortham and Gwrth. So Gwrth isn't locked in. It's going to either be just Gwrth, GWRTH, which is obviously my name to some degree, or Gwrth the band, or Gwrth the band. Like sounds quirkier, and I kind of like the quirky. But I'm gonna, it's going to be that part of it is going to be these two guys and me coming up with what we want because we'll be the core, adding a percussionist that's a multi-instrumentalist that will play some guitar on some songs along with me. Mostly percussion for that person. Occasionally drums along with the drummer and a full, stand-up drum set to go with the sit-down drum set. Quick synopsis of the way it's going to go. Finishing the album, putting the album out, promoting the album as Gary Wortham and Gary Darnell Wortham and of course the band. Got an album cover done by a friend of mine who's in Turkey now. You're in China. A lot of international stuff going on here. And we're going to start showcasing in the LA area, playing shows, the kind of shows where you don't get paid. They basically committed to, hey, we know we're not going to get paid for those kinds of shows right up front. And then spreading it out, further and further along, the region, and then the country, and then maybe occasionally like Mexico, Canada stuff and get it. Nice. But once we start making money on the shows, we'll be able to obviously travel more. Might get some financial backing, might make some distribution deals on the album. But then the idea is to take the music from Anomaly, the music from the Gorth album, and pick the best songs, and then release a live album where all of the music to this point has been created by yours truly. I'm that guy. I'm the Tom Schultz of this situation, if you look at it from a Boston standpoint.
Yeah.
And what's going to happen though is I want this to evolve into that. God, I'm going to go way back. Peter Frampton Comes Alive type live album that does better than the studio stuff, and then eventually, takes the front seat, and that's the version everybody wants to hear. The one that Travis, I'll use first names, Travis, the drummer, played on, because just in case there were commitments and they haven't signed anything yet. Or Jamone, the bass player, those are going to be the people that they're going to want to hear playing those parts. It's never going to. Once Boston was a band, it was no longer about Tom Schultz. It was about Boston, and I want it to be that way. I want the Heartbreakers always had to be those guys. You couldn't just have random people come in and be the Heartbreakers with content. So I want to share. I want to share the wealth. If we're gonna do well, I want everybody to do well.
Right. It brings out more from you, and it opens up possibilities, but also just in terms of sustainability. Like, one of the things I've listened to all of these reports of these different bands and collaborations over the years, some of the ones that we grew up loving, the people don't talk to each other anymore because that guy got paid 10% more than me. When you're making money,
exactly. You can say, okay, this guy started it and he got it going, and so he's that guy. That's fine. You're gonna give some homage to that, but you also don't want everybody else to starve.
Right.
And there are certain musicians, and there's one in particular who it was his name, and it wasn't Tom Petty, because I named him because he's good, but it was this guy. It was his name and the band that was named with him, and that band did interviews to this day still have never been paid properly for everything they did for Big and I. And I will never be that guy.
Yeah. Let's talk about Love, 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 because that's the first single from your new project that you released in September.
You got it twisted around you. Hey, such a good time. Love what you know, can you provide? Love.
And a couple of questions. First of all, I love how you mixed together, first of all, the sitar that you use in there, which is very cool. And then
everyone loves the sitar.
Yeah, it's awesome because it gives it just a different depth to the song, but also the languages in there.
El odio te ahogará, el odio te destruirá. Déjate amar, deja que todos podamos disfrutarte.
What are they saying? You have Spanish and you have something that sounds like Arabic. I don't know. What are they saying?
There's 8 different languages, 9 counting English. And what they're all saying is love will drown you, confuse you, and destroy you. Your self-love so we can all enjoy you. So I had those friends, Japanese. Wolof is from Senegal, and that's their language in Senegal. And I gave them all that English phrase and said, translate it into your language, but make it make sense in your language. So if you have to change it, that's okay. Change it around. It doesn't have to say perfectly that.
Mhm.
And so that's what they did. So they're all saying the same thing in a slightly different way. And so when I publish those lyrics to that on the paper, when you're reading them, it'll actually show you what they're saying in their language and even in their print. So the Japanese will actually be written in Japanese, what he's saying for the Japanese readers to read, but then it'll have that translated back into English, what it actually says. It's different from the original phrase.
Right.
None of them were professionals. None of them were singers or rappers or any of that. They were all entertainment adjacent. For example, the Japanese guy, since I'm talking about him, he's a really good drummer from Japan.
Okay.
First stop, Los Angeles. There's Hindi. There's a guy from India who sings a Hindi part in there. So that kind of meshes with the sitar a little bit.
Yeah, that's cool.
So,
I loved it. I really liked the song and the song itself, but then those things that you did to give it that extra meaning to it,
everybody likes a sitar.
Yeah, congratulations on
I
that.
never get to stop hearing about that.
We're gonna get cut off here, so I just want to say thank you so much for meeting with me for a third/fourth time on Armando Music. I really appreciate it, and I hope that we can catch up a little further down the road again.
There'll be more to talk about. Thank you, Jeremy, and be safe, have fun.
Okay.
I'll talk to you soon.
All right, thanks a lot, Gary.
Don't forget to like and subscribe. Good night.